who are furious at Prime Minister Netanyahu for the way he has conducted this war and for his failure to bring home their loved ones. I have met with people in my district who have been deeply impacted by this horrific tragedy, including too many who are justifiably afraid about the rise of anti-Semitism in this country and around the world. And the overwhelming majority of this Congress, Mr. Speaker, has voted to support basically unlimited military assistance and offensive weapons to Mr. Netanyahu. But even if someone approves of that military assistance, they should vote against this bill. You know, I've long considered myself a friend of Israel. I've traveled there. I believe Israelis deserve security, they deserve peace, they deserve safety. But turning a blind eye to what is happening in Gaza and saying that all these civilian casualties are somehow okay, in my opinion, does not make Israel more safe. It makes Israel less safe, less secure. Sanctioning and attacking the ICC is not only bad for Israel, my colleagues, it's bad for the United States. It's bad for the world. So I urge a no vote on this bill, and I reserve my time.
The gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, we are the people's house. Let me translate what was just said. It's not a priority for the people's house to do everything possible to get our people home, to include getting in the way of those that are getting in our way. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to yield 4 minutes to the genesis of this legislation, the gentleman from Texas, the lead sponsor, Mr. Roy.
The gentleman is recognized.
I thank my friend from Florida, the chairman. I thank him for his support on this legislation. I thank him for his statesmanship on this particular issue, which is critically important for not just our friendship with our ally Israel, but also our own national security, the protection of our own men and women in uniform. Let's be clear about what is happening at the so-called International Criminal Court right now. It has taken unprecedented action of issuing arrest warrants for the sitting Prime Minister and former Minister of Defense of our friend and ally Israel. Let that sit in for a minute. This is an entity, the International Criminal Court, that has no jurisdiction over the people of the United States, should have no authority over our people, no authority over the Prime Minister of Israel. Yet it is extending into the people of Israel's business in defending their interest against violent attack by Hamas, which we define as a terrorist entity, which, as the chairman just pointed out, has killed American citizens and holds American citizens hostage as we sit here today. And somehow it is not a priority for the people of our country that we represent, for us to be here on the floor of the House defending our men and women in uniform, defending our citizens, defending our ally Israel and the Prime Minister of Israel from a politicized witch hunt by the International Criminal Court, which again should have and doesn't have any jurisdiction over our people or the people of Israel. I would remind the gentleman from Massachusetts that 42 Democrats voted for this legislation last year. If this is such a crazy piece of legislation, perhaps the gentleman would like to have an inward-facing conference on his side of the aisle. It is very clearly a bipartisan interest to protect our people and the people of our friends in Israel. I would note that our problems aren't just the dangerous terrorist organizations like Hamas, but these international organizations given power over our citizens and our way of life. Not just the International Criminal Court, but, for example, UNRWA and other international organizations, without which Hamas wouldn't have many of the resources it needs to conduct these violent attacks on Israel and our own people. When the gentleman from Massachusetts talks about the plight of the people in Gaza, we should be reminded of the massive piles of pallets of food and relief that are stacked up because the United Nations is too incompetent to move those pallets, and remind our friends of the extent to which Hamas has been taking those resources and not distributing them to the people in Gaza. The fact of the matter here, this legislation is inherently America first. We have had situations where we've had American soldiers and our people targeted by the ICC. It will happen again if the House of Representatives and the Senate and the President don't take action to sanction the ICC to prevent this from happening again in the future. I appreciate the support of the chairman. I appreciate the support of virtually every member of the Republican side of the aisle. I appreciate the support of the 42 Democrats last summer. I look forward to a larger amount of support from Democrats when we vote on this today. I yield back.
The gentleman yields. The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts is
Thank
recognized.
you, Mr. Speaker. Let me yield to myself briefly. First of all, to the gentleman from Texas, I don't know how the vote on this will come out, and I'm sure some Democrats may vote for it. But actually, on our side, we actually welcome debate, and we welcome ways to improve the legislation. I'm told that there were negotiations going on to try to actually improve this legislation, and then the Speaker made a unilateral decision to go with the most extreme version. And this was not marked up in committee, and there were no amendments to this. It didn't come to the Rules Committee, so nobody can offer an amendment. Nobody can make a suggestion. Take it or leave it. I mean, that is the way, I guess, the way the Republicans are going to want to run the House. And to the distinguished chairman of the committee, he said, I think he must have misinterpreted me. He said something like, "This is the people's house, so let me translate what the gentleman, meaning me, just said in my opening remarks." He said, "Bringing the hostages home should not be a priority." Now, I know I'm from Massachusetts, and you may have a tough time understanding my accent, but the bottom line is that is not what I said. And in fact, I said very clearly that the taking of hostages is a war crime. What I said very clearly is that the hostages should be released immediately and unconditionally. And I have said that over and over and over again. I don't think, like many of the families of the hostages have expressed to me, that increased bombing is going to result in getting their loved ones home. That is the message that many of them have delivered to me personally when they have visited here in Washington. So again, please don't kind of manipulate what I have said here today. The taking of these hostages is horrific, and they must be released immediately and unconditionally. I hope that nobody disagrees with that. And with that, I reserve my time.
The gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What the gentleman did say very clearly was that this legislation is not a priority. And this legislation is meant to get in the way of those that are getting in our way from getting our Americans home. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Burchett.
The gentleman from Tennessee is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Chairman, thank you and Mr. Roy for bringing this important piece of legislation to us. Let's be clear. H.R. 23 is very clear. The International Criminal Court, the ICC, they don't believe Israel has the right to defend itself from terrorists or those that threaten to destroy Israel's way of life. The United States and Israel are not members of the ICC for good reason and without accident. Mr. Speaker, it's a dadgum sham court is what it is. These decisions by the ICC are reckless, and they not only put Israel at risk, they put Americans at risk as well. The United States, with our new Congress and new administration, is not going to put up with these international organizations putting us and our allies in harm's way. Hamas chose war, and dadgummit, Hamas got war. The ICC prosecutor, Karim Khan, has made a parody of justice, and he needs to find his place or we will help him find it. And I know when I get back to the office, I'm going to get text or contact from people saying that my AIPAC handler told me to do this, and I'll probably get my AIPAC handler in trouble, but I don't even know who the heck he or she is. The truth is, this is right. America should be on the side of the right. And for anyone to stand in the way of this important piece of legislation, I think owes the American public an explanation, and he owes especially your Jewish constituency. I fully support H.R. 23, and I look forward to passing it here shortly. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
The gentleman from Tennessee yields. The gentleman from Florida reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, again, I want to respond to the chairman of the committee. Yeah, we do disagree on the impact of this bill. I disagree that this bill is going to do anything to get the hostages released. Every time we have seen hostages released, it's been during a ceasefire, and not in the middle of intense bombing. Again, as many families of the hostages have expressed to me directly, they worry very much about the Prime Minister's continued policy of all in terms of military attacks in Gaza, because they worry very much that it decreases the likelihood that their loved ones will be freed. And with that, I reserve my time.
The gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to yield 2 minutes to the patriot from New York, Mr. Lawler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would note the gentleman from Massachusetts is talking about the Prime Minister. What about the President of the United States? We have 7 Americans still being held hostage, 4 deceased, 3 presumed living. Where is Joe Biden? Where is the President of the United States to make sure that American hostages are being brought home? It is shameful the way this administration has allowed these hostages to languish. They have not put adequate pressure on our allies. They have failed miserably in the responsibility to get Americans home. And when in fact there have been ceasefires, and when in fact hostages have been released, Americans have not. It is shameful. And so I rise in support of the Illegitimate Court Counteraction Act to reimpose sanctions on officials working for the International Criminal Court. This institution has continually abused its authority and demonstrated blatant hostility toward our allies and American values. As Israel has continued to defend itself against terrorists in the Middle East, over the objections of this administration, by the way, let's be clear, Sinwar and Nasrallah would still be alive if Netanyahu listened to this administration. The ICC has joined the UN in showing a clear bias against Israel. This culminated in the ICC seeking arrest warrants of the Prime Minister and other members of his cabinet. The Israelis have been working tirelessly for over a year to rescue hundreds of hostages still held by Hamas and defend their own people from further attacks. The ICC's actions amount to little more than a political smear campaign cloaked in the veneer of international law. This pattern of behavior from the ICC is not new. This is the same body that has repeatedly targeted the United States and our service members, attempting to investigate and prosecute Americans who have risked their lives to defend our freedom around the world. And so I urge my colleagues to support this critical measure and ensure that the U.S. remains steadfast in defending our allies, protecting our citizens, and upholding the tenets that have long
defined. I yield the gentleman another 30 seconds.
The gentleman has yielded an additional minute. The gentleman is recognized.
And upholding the tenets that have long defined our leadership on the world stage. And with that, I yield back to the chairman.
The gentleman yields. The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I just say to the gentleman that was a great speech for social media, but it will do nothing to get the hostages released, just like this bill. I reserve my time.
The gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, may I inquire how much time we have remaining?
The gentleman from Florida has 18 minutes. The gentleman from Massachusetts has 19 minutes.
And Mr. Speaker, I would remind everybody that every time my colleagues across the way rise, they rise to oppose legislation that would get in the way of those getting in our way of bringing Americans home. That's what they're standing against. That's what they're rising against. Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from California, Mr. McClintock.
The gentleman from California is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, the unprovoked and barbaric attack on Israeli civilians on October 7th presented Israel with a fundamental moral obligation to annihilate the forces that had unleashed such depravity. Ironically, the United Nations was conceived in the aftermath of the Holocaust, precisely to stand behind the civilized nations of the world when the forces of evil threaten. Tragically, it has become grotesquely perverted. UNRWA staff actively participated in the attack of October 7th, and its ICC has now become a kangaroo court waging lawfare against Israel's wartime leaders. The ICC has thus made a mockery of every hope and dream that gave birth to the United Nations and is declared by its own obscene acts to be itself a threat to world peace, international order, and the rule of law. I wholeheartedly support this bill, sanctioning anyone who gives it aid and comfort in pursuing its twisted agenda. I yield back.
The gentleman yields. The gentleman from Florida reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
I reserve, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Weber.
I thank the gentleman. Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong support of my fellow Texan calling for sanctions on the International Criminal Court officials who dare to target U.S. citizens or our allies, especially our ally Israel. Mr. Speaker, the ICC is nothing more than a kangaroo court. Their absolute blind obsession in pursuing Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, notwithstanding Hamas's unspeakable atrocities, reveals the ICC's true loyalties. Their actions signal a dangerous complicity with terrorist groups like Hamas, as well as others, I might add. The ICC's ignorance of reality disqualifies them from passing judgment on those defending themselves against pure evil. I can't say that strong enough. Against pure evil. It's that pure and simple. The ICC doesn't get it. I've been to Israel since the horrific October 7 attacks, Mr. Speaker. On the other hand, the ICC has not only not witnessed firsthand, as I have, the devastation and terror inflicted on innocent lives, they've not been there. So our message is clear. The ICC is a disgrace, it's a sham, and its officials need to find real jobs. They have no authority to target Americans or our allies, especially Israel, and we won't stand for it. Mr. Speaker, I look forward to passing this bill and encouraging the Senate to pass it in time for President Trump to sign it on day one. I yield back.
The gentleman from Texas yields. The gentleman from Florida reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
I reserve, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Biggs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Chairman, for yielding time to me. Neither the United States nor Israel recognize the legitimacy of the ICC. We're not members. The ICC has no authority to violate the sovereignty of either of those nations. This bill is essential for protecting American citizens, service members, our allies, especially Israel, from these politically motivated, putative prosecutions by the ICC. Israel and its leaders have an inherent right to defend themselves against these terrorist attacks that occur from Hamas, and they get to also attempt to rescue these hostages. But the ICC's attempts to interfere with Israel's self-defense and issue arrest warrants from the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, and their Minister of Defense undermines justice. As the only member of Congress who actually attended the Rome Conference that formulated the ICC document in the summer of 1998, I can attest that the ICC is hopelessly biased and is illegitimate. It claims authority it does not have. It attempts to claim jurisdiction and issue sanctions against Israel, as we could have predicted, and many of us did who were at that conference watching this ICC formed. The ICC is an institution without a mandate from the international community, and the ICC must understand that the United States will not allow its overreach to harm U.S. citizens or our allies. Thank you. I yield back.
The gentleman yields. The gentleman from Florida reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, just for the record, I just want the record to reflect that. I mean, I remember hearing widespread support from many of my Republican colleagues when the ICC issued a warrant against Vladimir Putin for the kidnapping of Ukrainian children, as well as when they issued a warrant against Bashir for the genocide in Sudan. So I guess what we're hearing here is that we want to pick and choose on their side how we're going to react to the ICC based on what they do. I mean, the bottom line is this is the beginning of a process. It is not the end of a process. And again, this bill will do nothing to help get the release of our hostages, including those Americans who are held hostage, and it will isolate us within the world community, especially with many of our allies. I reserve my time.
The gentleman from Massachusetts yields back. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would remind my friends across the way that Americans are being held and get in the way of those that are getting in our way. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Miller.
The gentleman from Ohio is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank the gentleman for yielding, and thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's very clear that the gentleman from Massachusetts is well out of his depth when it comes to military warfare and how to conduct an operation. I'll let that speak for itself. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in strong support of this legislation. In November of 24, the International Criminal Court issued arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and former Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant on baseless and reprehensible charges of war crimes and crimes against humanity. These charges are not only morally indefensible, but a blatant bias of justice. Israel does not deliberately target civilians as terrorists harbor them in mosques, churches, and schools, and hospitals, and so many more. The Israeli government has taken unprecedented steps to minimize civilian harm during conflicts, a commitment that's unparalleled by any other nation facing terrorists. The accusation that Israel uses starvation as a weapon of war is a blatant lie, ignoring the immense humanitarian aid Israel has proven and provided to Gaza despite ongoing attacks. This illegitimate attack on Israel emboldens terrorist organizations like Hamas. Both President Biden and President Trump have rightly condemned these charges, recognizing their destructive implications. This critical legislation, which has previously passed this body with strong bipartisan support, sends a clear and unequivocal message the United States will not tolerate the ICC's abuse of power against our allies or our citizens. Once again, the ICC has no jurisdiction over the United States of America or the people of Israel. They need to call this what it is: anti-Semitism. That's what this is. That's what the ICC is going after, and that's what you're condoning from the gentleman of Massachusetts, and I see the support on the other side of the aisle with all your colleagues sitting next to you, fighting right alongside. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Florida reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Two things, Mr. Speaker. To the gentleman who just spoke, the reason why my colleagues are not here is because the Republicans scheduled this debate during President Carter's funeral, which I find to be incredibly disappointing, given President Carter's stature in this country and his commitment to human rights. And to the chairman of the committee, I was a little bit startled. He says, "Get with the American team." Well, because we have a disagreement that somehow I'm not with the American team? Last time I checked, we're still a democracy, at least for the time being. And you can have disagreements on this issue, and we can still respect each other's point of view. But if I thought for 1 second that this bill that we're debating today would help get the release of the hostages and the American hostages, I'd be with you. But it won't. It complicates things even further, and it isolates us in the world community at a time, quite frankly, when we need allies. And we need everybody working to try to resolve the conflict in the Middle East and to get all the hostages released, and to ensure that Israel has its security, and to ensure that the Palestinians have a future as well. With that, I reserve my time.
The gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The gentleman across the aisle is right. We need everybody working to get hostages home, to get this resolved. And that means not giving an iota of recognition to kangaroo courts like the ICC, who are trying to prevent Israeli military success, who are conducting their brand of anti-Semitism against Israeli leaders, preventing Americans and our allies from being returned home. Again, Israel is the tip of the spear in our way. Mr. Speaker, may I inquire how much time I have remaining?
The gentleman has 10 minutes remaining.
Mr. Massachusetts on the way. Since I have 10 minutes remaining,
This has 16 and a half.
Since I have 10 minutes remaining, I'm going to sit here in silence for 120 seconds and see if my colleague from Texas shows up.
Right behind the mic.
It's a good lesson, thanks. I'll remain standing here.
Handle it that way.
Mr. Speaker, it appears that we will have no more speakers, and I will reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from
Until the
Florida
gentleman
reserves.
yields back.
The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
No, I don't think let me close for us. I yield myself the remaining time, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as we close debate, I want to reiterate my opposition to this misguided legislation. The International Criminal Court exists to hold the world accountable, to prevent atrocities, and to serve as a reminder that no one is above the law. Abandoning the ICC, as H.R. 23 proposes, undermines our values, undermines our alliances, and undermines our credibility on the world stage. This is a moment to reaffirm our commitment to human rights, to international law, and to the partnerships that have defined American leadership. And this bill fails that test. By sanctioning officials of the ICC and anyone who has done business with them, this bill would have a chilling effect on America's work to support human rights and rule of law around the world. It would hamper the ICC's efforts to prosecute serious atrocities that have wrecked lives and destabilized countries in many places around the world, from Ukraine to Uganda to Darfur. NGOs would be chilled from sharing evidence of the grave crimes committed in these places. Many of us celebrated in March of 2023 when the ICC's judges issued arrest warrants for Vladimir Putin and another senior Russian official for abducting thousands of Ukrainian children. Congress even passed legislation to enable the United States to provide financial support to and share information with the ICC to investigate and prosecute Putin and his regime for their heinous crimes in Ukraine. This bill we are considering today would undermine that work and rob it of its legitimacy. If passed, this misguided legislation would bluntly curtail our ability to engage the ICC, to advance our interests in supporting justice and accountability, and crucially, to share relevant information with our partners and allies. Speaking of our allies, this bill is so absurdly broad that it would sanction our own allies. This would sanction our own allies. Read the bill. Read the bill. Our allies would be sanctioned for supporting the ICC if this were to pass. The largest funders of the ICC are America's closest allies, the UK, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, As drafted, the leaders of these countries would be sanctioned for providing material assistance to the ICC. That's truly nuts. Doesn't make any sense to me. The legislative bodies of these countries could also be sanctioned for appropriating funds to the ICC. And by some interpretations, interparliamentary travel to Europe could become a sanctionable activity. Did anybody think this through? Is sanctioning the leaders of our closest friends and allies really the best we can do here? Not only that, this sanctions over 900 members from approximately 100 countries at the court, from judges and prosecutors to administrative staff, including nationals of close U.S. allies and partners who collectively work to prosecute war criminals all around the globe. The language in this bill is so broad that even cafeteria workers and janitors, even their families, could be construed as having, quote, supported or materially assisted in these prosecutions by providing services to the ICC. This is nuts. This is nuts. And what would happen next? I can tell you, Mr. Speaker. American companies would be banned from doing business with the ICC if its top officials are sanctioned, and their Chinese competitors would rush in to fill the gap. Not only does this undermine America's interests, it bolsters Russia and it helps China. Mr. Speaker, this is a bad bill. Not only is it a bad bill, but nobody had any opportunity at all to amend it. This is being brought to the floor under a completely closed process. So all the faults that I have just outlined, we can't address them. We can't address them because of the way this majority is bringing this bill to the floor. 0 amendments are allowed because Republicans brought it up under a closed rule. And again, another wasted opportunity. So we can do better, Mr. Speaker. And in my opinion, behind-the-scenes diplomacy with the International Criminal Court alongside our partners is far more likely to yield a result than the approach put forward by this bill. You know, I oppose this legislation, and I urge my colleagues to do the same. And I reserve my time.
And the gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The gentleman from the other side's statement is as untrue now as it was when he gave the same speech a few months ago on this very floor. And I would say the message is clear to everybody. Don't get in America's way as we are trying to work with our allies to get our Americans home and our allies home. I'm proud to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Jackson.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Speaker, on October 7, 2023, Hamas terrorists brutally murdered and kidnapped hundreds of innocent Israelis. Over a year later, Hamas still holds hostages, some dead, but many alive. Israel, in response to these truly horrific attacks, has defended itself from Hamas and other Iranian terrorist proxies. I would have expected the international community to unequivocally condemn these barbaric terrorist attacks by Hamas and support Israel's fight for survival. However, corrupt international organizations like the International Criminal Court have issued arrest warrants against Israeli officials for simply trying to defend themselves and defend their country. The ICC's anti-Semitism speaks volumes. This is an unacceptable attack against our greatest ally, and the United States must make it clear that those who participate in this illegitimate prosecutions from the ICC are subject to the strongest possible sanctions. America needs leadership, and this is where we need it. I urge you and my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to stand with Israel and to vote for H.R. 23. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
The gentleman from Texas yields back. The gentleman from Florida reserves.
Mr. Speaker, I'm prepared to close if the gentleman yields back.
The gentleman from Florida reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if the United States of America stands for anything, we need to stand out loud and four square for human rights. And that means we have to hold ourselves accountable, we have to hold our allies accountable, and we have to hold our adversaries accountable when they don't live up to those standards. And the International Criminal Court is there to hold countries accountable and to hold entities accountable when they commit human rights crimes. They're there to investigate, and they're there to prosecute. And for us in Congress to get involved in sanctioning the ICC because, we don't like the fact that they're pointing out some of the serious issues in Gaza committed by one of our closest allies. For us to sanction them because of that undermines the court, undermines our credibility in the world, undermines our credibility on human rights. Why would we do that? This bill does nothing to help get the hostages released. Nothing at all. And again, let me be clear, all of us should be saying as loudly as we possibly can that all the hostages should be released immediately and unconditionally. And Hamas is, they have arrest warrants out for the leadership of Hamas precisely because of what happened on October 7th. The ICC wants to hold them accountable. But what we're doing here, it doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't make any sense to me. And again, the bill as it is written is so flawed. Again, if it maybe went through regular order, if you brought it to the Rules Committee and we made a few amendments in order, we might actually have, we might have been able to fix some of the flaws that I pointed out. But instead, keeping to the tradition of this Republican leadership, which oversaw the most closed Congress in the history of the United States in the last session, I guess we're going to expect more of the same. You take it or leave it, my way, the highway. This is about a soundbite, I guess, more than it is about trying to achieve peace in the Middle East or trying to get the release of our hostages or trying to uphold a high standard of human rights. I find this really disappointing. I really do. And again, I said at the opening of my statement to the new chairman, I hope that we can find areas where we can work together to help improve the quality of life for people all around the world. But this bill is not going to do that. And I think we could do so much better here. This is not about whether you support Israel or not. This is a whole different discussion that we're having here today. This is about whether you want to delegitimize the International Criminal Court, a court, by the way, which many Republicans supported when it went after Bashir in Darfur and Putin for kidnapping the Russian children. Again, we're entering a very dangerous time where we're bringing legislation to the floor to demagogue issues rather than to be constructive. We've got to take a deep breath around here because some of the stuff that's come to this floor really is beneath this institution. And I regret that we're doing this here today. I urge everybody, and I hope some of my Republican colleagues will join with us in opposing this legislation. We can do better. We need to do better. And with that, I yield back my time.
The gentleman from Massachusetts yields back. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this bill sends an incredibly important message across the globe when we make this law. Do not get in the way of America or our allies trying to bring our people home. Don't get in our way. You will be given no quarter, and again, you will certainly not be welcomed to American soil. This bill is even more urgent today than when it was first passed back in June of last year. In June, the ICC's prosecutor had just only requested warrants. The warrants had not yet been issued or approved. There was still time for the ICC to abandon this shameful effort. Instead, the ICC's attempt to obstruct Israel's right to defend itself has only prolonged the war and prevented the release of American hostages by boosting the morale of Hamas. If you're boosting the morale of Hamas, you are on the other team. And in November, the ICC's pretrial chamber approved the arrest warrants. We have to pass this bill today to prevent this travesty from moving any further and to deter any more illegitimate actions by this kangaroo court, to halt or stall the military success of our allies trying to bring hostages home, both American and Israeli and others. For that reason, I call on every single one of my colleagues to put America first by voting for this legislation today, and I yield the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. All time for debate has expired. Pursuant to House Resolution 5, the previous question is ordered on the bill. The question is on the engrossment and third reading of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chairs, the ayes have it. Third reading.
A bill to impose sanctions with respect to the International Criminal Court engaged in any effort to investigate, arrest, detain, or prosecute any protected person of the United States and its allies.
The question is on the passage of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chairs, the ayes have it, and the bill is passed. For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida say?
I request the yeas and nays, please.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring the votes for the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having arisen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question are postponed. Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the Chair declares the House in recess subject to the call of the Chair. The House will be in order. For what purpose does the gentleman from Colorado seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, by the direction of the Democratic Caucus, I offer a privileged resolution and ask for its immediate consideration.
Will report the resolution.
House Resolution 22, resolved that the following named members be and are hereby elected to the following standing committees of the House of Representatives.
Consent that the resolution be considered as read and printed in the record.
Without objection, the resolution is without objection. Without objection, the resolution is agreed to and the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the unfinished business is the vote on the passage of H.R. 23, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 23, a bill to impose sanctions with respect to the International Criminal Court engaged in any effort to investigate, arrest, detain, or prosecute any protected person of the United States and its allies.
The question is on the passage of the bill. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 15-minute vote.